Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards.
Hi everybody, this is Ian Battersby, Senior ISO Consultant with Blackmores UK Limited. Regular listeners will be used to a sort of particular format for these types of interviews that we do. We hold them quite regularly with clients, partner organisations, that sort of thing. And they tend to follow a sort of format around talking about their experiences of their implementation of a specific management system standard. Today's slightly different. We're not talking about a management system standard as such, and it's not an ISO standard even, and it currently isn't even a standard. We're looking at British Standard BS 30480 or 3480, or however it's going to be termed. This is a standard in development, and I think probably just in the completion of public consultation phase. We've got a guest, Marcus Long here today. Who'll tell us a bit more about himself in a second. It's good to have you, Marcus. If you could just, in a few words, Marcus, tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, which organisation?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Ian. Good to be joining you today.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. So, look, I run an organisation called IIOA, which is the Independent International Organisation for Assurance, and is a trade association for global assurance bodies. So my members are carrying out certification to a whole range of different standards, management systems, scheme owner standards, product certification, and they run a whole range of other services such as validation, verification, training, and those kind of things.
Right.
Now, I've been doing that for a number of years now, and actually prior to that I have been in what you would call a quality infrastructure. So I was actually working for the national standards body side of BSI. So having been in standards development and then moving into the application of that and certification, etc., I've had something like 20 years worth of experience of really trying to push forward the benefits and the value of the quality infrastructure and the fabulous things that it can do to make things better, whatever those things are.
Right. That's something I talk about quite regularly, that taking a standards approach to the way you manage a business or an organisation of some kind can be really quite powerful in understanding what it is you're supposed to be delivering and how to do it better. You know, that structured approach to improvement. So you're living in a world that I like to talk about quite regularly. Now, beyond standards and our nerdy world in which we live, we do this to all of our guests. Tell us something about yourself, Marcus, that not many people know. Not many people in a professional sense perhaps know.
Okay. I was thinking this one through when you asked the question before we met, and I did have a kind of significant event a couple of weeks ago that I ended up completing 48 hours underwater. Okay?
Really?
And this is where you have lies, damn lies, and statistics, because I didn't do it all in 2 days. That's me doing scuba diving since about 1990, because I'm very much a warm water kind of diver. I don't want to have to wear a dry suit and do it I've done dry suit stuff before. I don't want to do that again. I need nice warm water. So I just thought that was quite an interesting little landmark, or watermark, one could say, couldn't you?
That's a long period of time then, isn't it, to amass your 48 hours?
It's a very, very long period. You know, I dive with people that have done hundreds and hundreds of dives, and there's me coming along with my 75 or something like that add up to 2 days underwater. So I'm quite jealous of those people, but there you go.
Well done. It's a feat in itself, a milestone. You should celebrate. So yeah, must be a great world under there. Anyway, so let's go back to this standard. Do you call it BS 3480 or do you call it 30480? Or
I have to be honest, I haven't quite worked out how the easiest way for it to trip off the tongue. Some standard numbers do just come to you very naturally, don't they? And this one we maybe need to think a little bit about as we take it forward.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something that the whole standard needs some serious thinking about. It's a very somber subject, isn't it? It's a very serious subject. So could you, just in a few words, summarise for us what the standard's all about?
Okay. Well, if I may, I'd just like to kind of start off with where this came from.
Yes.
And it kind of brought together two parts of my life, my personal and my professional life. So in October 2020, my son Adam, who was 21 at the time, he took his life. And for literally years after that, probably 3 years, I was seeking some kind of silver lining to what was just the most unimaginable harm, and the most imaginable.
Well, I can't imagine. I can't. No.
It's kind of beyond words, really.
Yeah.
And so, trying to find something that would give some kind of peace to that was incredibly important. And as I say, it kind of took me about 3 years, and like many simple ideas, the idea was always staring me in the face, and that was the industry I worked in.
Right.
The industry that we work in is about finding solutions. It's about solving problems. It's about making things better.
Yes.
Wherever we are today, we want to make things better tomorrow. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about sustainability, quality, health and safety. We look to make things better for people, for organisations, etc. So why can't we apply that to something as difficult and as heartbreaking as suicide? Now, in the UK, there are in excess of 6,000 deaths by suicide every year. And you multiply that up around the world, and statistics are difficult to find, but this suggests that there are in excess of 750,000 deaths by suicide across the globe every year.
And that's a tragedy, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, exactly. And there are some amazing efforts being put into this by some amazing people to solve the problem. But what I thought can our industry look to provide some solutions to this? So I started talking to some national standards bodies a couple of years ago in different countries around the globe to see whether the idea would be one that could maybe be a goer. I talked to IIOA about it as well to see what their thoughts were. And within 4 months, the conclusion was that probably the best thing to do would be to start off with a standard in one country, not to go for the big solution of ISO right to start with.
Right, yeah.
So I continued my discussions with some national standards bodies, and at the time, BSI was working incredibly hard on a brand new standard on menstrual health and the menopause in the workplace.
Right.
And it just struck me that here was an organisation prepared to come up with solutions and to help people on subjects that people don't want to talk about necessarily. Some people don't even want to accept they exist, let alone actually trying to help people out.
Right.
So we discussed this more and more, and the first step was we actually held a workshop at the Houses of Parliament back in February of last year. And what we did is we started using the kind of standards development ideas of bringing together people with a whole range of different experiences.
Right, yeah.
To say, is this a goer? Is this something that we think has actually got some value and that we think can do some good? And that first stage was both horribly nerve-wracking and also very, very enlightening. It was amazing to hear people who had often come to the subject through their own pain and how they wanted to make things right and they wanted to do things as much as they possibly could to stop people like my son Adam ending up concluding what he thought was best for him, to stop the pain that so many different people have from suicide and its consequences. And it really set us on the way to saying, okay, there is something good we can do here. There is a standard here that we can do. So that's when the work really started to do things like get some better scope on the idea of the standard, get some idea what should be involved in the standard, what type of standard it was, and vitally, who was going to help us actually put the standard together. So that's the background to it, and that's where the thing all started out.
Well, and as a background, it's a tragedy in itself. The statistics you talk about don't even begin to scratch the surface on that, do they? And first thing to say is that I'm just deeply sorry to hear your story about Adam. As a father myself, I can't imagine what that must be like. But hopefully, this journey will bring that silver lining somehow. And I imagine that other people working on the standard probably have similar stories to tell, I imagine. So on that sort of theme, who else is involved in the development of this standard? Which people and bodies are there with you on this?
Yeah, so like the development of virtually all standards, we have a rich tapestry of different people involved in the standard. And across that broad collection of people that most standards actually have, we have people from academia, we have people from business, we have people from the healthcare system, we have people who have been involved in suicide prevention and introducing other measures and other ways of trying to reduce the rate of suicide in the UK. So we have a very rich group of people. The thing that motivates them all is a passion to help solve the problem. And that passion, like it does with the development of so many standards, is such a driver, it's such a motivator to end up with the best document that you can put together that serves the greatest purpose of trying to come up with solutions to the problem that you're trying to address. We're led by Professor Anne John, who's a Professor of Public Health and Psychiatry at Swansea University.
Right.
And what Anne and the rest of the committee are doing, and we also have a drafting panel, is drawing together all those different views to actually end up with where we are at the moment with the draft standard in place that we think is going to be best to help us try and solve the issues that we actually have.
And the aim there, then, the standard's aiming to achieve a basis to help people, organisations to actually put in place strategies to deal with this. Is it the case that organisations don't know how to do this, or they're a bit ad hoc in their approach, that are they clutching at straws? What do you hope this standard can achieve with them?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, and my personal experience is a classic example, that what you do about suicide is regrettably, in a huge number of instances, a reactive thing.
Yes.
It's a thing that you do once something has happened.
Yeah.
What we want to do with this standard is we want to try and encourage suicide prevention strategies, systems and policies, and whatever kind of appropriate practical actions there are to have a proactive approach to suicide so that we end up ideally in a situation where we help prevent suicides. That's the number one thing that we're trying to do. And, I never like to argue with what the people have written in the standards. And if I may, I will quote what they say in the draft of the standard, right, where they say, the aim is to make workplaces more suicide safe, more conducive to suicide prevention, more supportive of those who have been exposed to suicide, more knowledgeable and confident in talking about suicide and taking actions that prevent suicide. And I think they're brilliant words that sum up what we're trying to do here.
They are really, aren't they? That's a fabulous encapsulation of your intent as a group, isn't it? And I think you've hit on a sad fact there that many standards, laws, regulations are born out of disaster in some way or another. whether it's been a transport disaster, an oil field disaster, whether it's been a fire or multiple fires, whatever it might be, that there's often a source to these things which is shocking to think about, and that we haven't planned in advance to prevent these things.
Yeah.
And hopefully this will bring some learning. And you talked about the structure there of things. You talked about policy, procedural things, and we touched on your history working in management systems standards. Is there any correlation between this and what we traditionally see as management system standards, the 9,000s, the 14,000s, and 45,001 in particular, and 45,003?
The first thing is that the standard is for guidance. It's guidelines. So
yes,
it's not a requirements document like you will see in management system standards. It is guidance. And obviously it was one of the key considerations when the work on the standard first kicked off, is what kind of document do we actually want to produce here? And the feeling was that there was going to be such a wide range of experience that people would bring to the subject, but unfortunately huge numbers of people would have no idea at all. So if the idea being that by providing some guidance and some guidelines, people will be able to pick and choose the bits that are relevant for their kind of organisation. Now, of course, with a requirements document, it's not quite so easy to do that.
Yeah.
You really have to justify why you're not doing certain parts of the requirements.
And then there is always that fear that people use the requirement standard for the wrong purposes. They are badge wearers rather than doing it for the right reason. And I think we can all recognise the circumstances where we've seen that. I imagine in your field you will have seen that multiple times.
Yeah, I think that the idea of this was very much, we give a tool for people, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you're the HR director of a multinational. It doesn't matter whether you are the person who does the HR as well as doing the accounts, as well as being the legal counsel for an organisation. And actually the draft standard has a number of appendix that actually are almost kind of guidance lists for people to look at how they can carry out various parts of a suicide prevention plan. And I think that's a really positive thing, that this is where the standard is fitting the problem that we've got, as opposed to necessarily being crowbarred into a particular framework of working. And we're giving people lots of practical ideas and lots of practical solutions to really help them out.
That's the word that sprung to mind, actually. It sounds practical. And I suppose in these circumstances, that's exactly what you want. If you're looking for a way of doing this, practical answers and ones which are appropriate. Not everything suits every organisation. You just described what a lot of us see, which is the small organisation where somebody has to wear many hats. They're not necessarily a master of all the different things that they work on. So I imagine practical solutions are going to be quite useful. So you talked about this idea of it being based in one national standards body to begin with. This was your initial solution. Are the aspirations to then take that beyond?
Okay, so it's always quite a difficult question because, we haven't even published a standard yet. Hopefully that will be in November of this year. So that's right. The aim we're working for. We've just finished the public consultation period, which finished last month, where we got a very good, strong and positive response from a range of different people, picking up on some key themes, but a lot of endorsement about what we've done. But yes, good. Ultimately, I would love to see this standard move into the ISO system as well. And, I don't wish us to run before we can walk. I want us to get the standard out there. I'm talking with BSI about other communications tools around the standard, maybe subsets of the standard, maybe smaller versions of the standard, maybe training, maybe webinars, etc., etc. So we want to embed that. And of course, getting the standard out will be a brilliant moment, but completely useless unless people know about it and people are implementing it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a strategy for that, communications and awareness of it, firstly, to the audience of BSI, And then is there a strategy for going more global? Have they been looked at yet, the global side of things, the national strategy on communication?
Yeah. So formally within BSI, the overall committee has actually got three parts to it. There's the main committee, there's the drafting panel, and then there's the communication and stakeholder group, which I'm actually chairing the latter one, to kind of push that through. And the first stage that we'll be going to with the launch is we've kind of completed already, because actually we did a lot of communication around the drafting panel and who was going to be in the drafting panel. We did a lot of work during the leading up to the consultation period opening as well, and we worked with some key bodies on that. And we will maybe go a little bit quieter now while we're waiting for the drafting panel and the BSI editorial team to conclude the standard. And when they're happy about we can go on this date, then we'll start ramping up the dialogue about what the standard is all about and what it can achieve for people. And most importantly, engaging more and more with those organisations that could pick up the standard, use the standard and actually implement the standard. And I think just by starting that dialogue, I mean, one of the interesting things we've done in the standard is the beginning of the standard actually has some myths around suicide, because one of the big issues that we find is that people don't know whether to even talk about the subject.
Right.
They don't know whether that is a dangerous thing to do, and we're making it very clear to people that it should be an open subject, a subject that you talk to people about, that isn't one that you just hide away from. So the communication will all be part of that. We'll all be encouraging people to have a dialogue about suicide, to make sure that it is a consideration. And I think we can build on that. Ian, you talked about ISO 45001 and even 45003 as well. You know, there are an increasing number of tools that are being developed that think about well-being and how people are in the workplace. But also what we can do with this standard is other organisations can use it, places that maybe you don't think of necessarily as a traditional workplace, but educational institutions, sports clubs, charities, youth clubs, places like that, a whole range of different places can use the standard and hopefully help people who come in touch with that organisation.
And the well-being seems to be quite a modern concept. The Health and Safety at Work Act now is 51 years old this year, you know. It talks about health and safety, but for many, many a year, it's been more about the reactive side of safety, you know, putting a harness on, putting a hard hat on, putting boots on, that sort of thing. Health has not been, I don't think, recognised in the same manner until a generation later, I think, and well-being as well. There are welfare regulations, but they talk about whether you can have a toilet or not. They're not about the mental well-being of people as such. And more people are affected in terms of their health than they are in terms of their safety, I think, in the workplace.
I mean, there are a couple of statistics that something like 1 in 5 people in the UK will experience loss from suicide in some form during their life. A colleague, a friend, a relative. And some work, and again, this is one of those good examples of people being afraid of talking about this. But from a business point of view, businesses are going to implement a standard that helps them out as an organisation. A report done by the Samaritans a couple of years ago suggested that each death by suicide actually resulted in a cost of almost £1.5 million because of healthcare system, emergency services system, lost productivity, and a whole range of things like that. Now, in a way, I'm glad I can introduce this subject and talk about it. Many people would be fearful of introducing the topic of cash when it comes to the discussion of suicide. But if we are going to encourage employers, businesses, government, local government to use the standard, they must also realise that there are a whole range of different advantages to introducing this. I mean, The number one thing is people not dying. Of course, that comes way above everything else. But there are these other things as well that deliver benefit, and we shouldn't be afraid of talking about them. We shouldn't be afraid of raising them and saying to people, look, this standard is going to deliver good in so many different ways.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, you have to talk about the investment opportunity of putting in place, not the requirements, the guidance in the standard to invest the time, invest any other resources, invest in communications and awareness of materials and the like within the workplace. And you have to talk the language of their business. They have to be able to make decisions on how they spend their money. And it seems a little bit not quite in the spirit of what we're talking about, but it does have to be addressed, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think that, as we see so many times, if you implement a standard in your organisation for the right reasons, then you benefit far more than those people who are just implementing it because they thought they had to.
Yeah.
And that's all about culture. And there's so many things where this standard fits into the cultural idea that you really make a strong statement about you as an organisation by implementing this standard and helping people out. And if at the same time, again, it's one of those peripheral benefits, isn't it? That if you can actually implement the standard and use the standard and let people in your organisation know about the standard, then that's going to deliver benefits exactly as the standard says it will. But it also does an awful lot else for your organisation as well. And I think this is one of the things that we're trying to knock down those barriers and say to people, look, there is so much that the standard can do for you.
It just seems, well, it's just intuitive, isn't it? That by adopting some practical solutions as per the standard to make your workplace a better place and affect the lives of your workers, that it is better for your organisation as a whole. There are ways and means of measuring social value, and this is really a concrete example of that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that if it saves lives in the process, if it makes people's lives better, if it gives people a route to helping people out, the obvious example is where someone gets the feeling from one of their colleagues that their colleague is in trouble, that their colleague needs help. By someone knowing about this standard and someone in an organisation having responsibility for the standard, it enables people who hear about people who are struggling to be able to say to them, right, I know what to do now. I know where to go. I know the person to talk to. I know the document to pick up. Yeah. I know there is something that will help me do the next step, take the next step. Because when you talk to people about the subject, so many people go, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
This standard helps them understand what to do now, what to do next.
I think that's a great place to sort of round off what you're talking about. You talked about practical solutions, and what you've just described there is hopefully a situation where those practical solutions help real people make the right decisions to help their colleagues, their friends, whoever it may be. So is there anything else on the standard you want to share with us before we finish, Marcus?
No, I think the key thing, Ian, is that once the standard is published, as I say, hopefully in November of this year,
yes,
we're going to try and talk to as many different people about the standard and what it can do and how they can use it and how they can implement it. One of the great beauties for me about this being about actually producing a standard is it will touch people that maybe had never even thought about it as an issue, had never thought about it as a subject at all, because BSI has a huge reach through its enormous standards portfolio of so many different types of organisations. If we can reach to those organisations, the trade bodies that represent them, government departments that could implement it, if we can reach out to those people. And what I would say, Ian, is that, as many people who are going to listen to this as possible can look into it, understand what it's about, introduce it to the thinkers and the implementers in their organisation and trade associations and people like that. As many people as possible can do about that, because it is a very different kind of standard. It's a very different thing that we're doing here. It's a very different solution to suicide awareness and suicide prevention. So We need as many advocates as possible for us out there about this.
Well, hope and pray that those advocates are there and can push this agenda as much as possible. That's been fascinating, Marcus. Born out of difficult circumstances, obviously, but hopefully with a very positive sort of message of being able to minimise this as much as possible. So thank you for all of that. Now, we always end with something about the person, about you. We ask a couple of questions. The first question is, if you could gift a book to somebody, what book would that be and why?
Okay. On last Saturday, I went and saw a play called Brixton Calling, and it's based on a book called Live at Brixton Academy, which was written by a guy called Simon Parkes, who bought the Academy for £1 in 1983.
The man with the orchestra?
No, someone completely different. No,
right.
and he through a process of kind of just absolute desire to turn this building, which was not quite derelict, but it was basically a storage place, into an absolute heart for people to come together. I just thought it's such a brilliant story. I mean, I've been to Brixton Academy over 100 times to see gigs there, and so it was really inspirational. But I just love the inspiration of someone's putting his heart into bringing people together, and not just because of the music that I've loved there and I've seen there, but actually this person doggedly wanting to bring people together to share something magical. I love that. I thought that was really good.
Well, that's great, and it is an iconic place. I've never been, but it's so well known. That might be an interesting book to pick up. And finally, before we finish, what's your favourite quote, Marcus, that you'd like to leave with our listeners? Have you got one?
Well, yeah, I mean, this kind of sounds like I'm very short-term because I talked about the play I saw on Saturday, and on Sunday I went to the summer exhibition at the Royal Academy. And one of the paintings there was a painting by Bob and Roberta Smith, and the painting all it had on were these words. It says, "What unites human beings is huge and wonderful. What divides human beings is small and mean." And you can argue till the cows come home about whether that's right or wrong or whatever else, but I love the kind of provocation about what that's all about, and it just kind of makes you think about positivity and about how kind of all choose whether our glass is half full or half empty. And that just jumped out at me. I really like that. It just got me thinking. As I say, it's not necessarily right or wrong, but I just love the idea of it.
Definitely food for thought. I would have, in my own thinking, I would amend it slightly. And the second part will be small-minded and mean. But that's just my own take on the world.
Yeah.
But a fascinating quote in these times. Possibly something to hold on to. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Marcus, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you for sharing everything, your story and this journey. Good luck with the Standard and its launch, and good luck with it reaching as many people as it possibly can in order to try and actually change people's lives and prolong people's lives. Marcus, everybody, quite inspirational in many ways this. So thank you. Please join us again. Thank you all for listening. Hopefully this gives you all food for thought as well. Look for the Standard when it's issued in November, hopefully. That's all from me. We'll see you again on another episode. Goodbye.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.